Receptor je rekel z malo.
Janez, a bo Sonja sem prišla? Kje si Sonja? A boš prišla zgor ali?
is on this screen.
Yes.
Sorry.
Kico.
I'm sorry, this is something wrong. I will try to restart this.
Hey, I think we started,
Okay.
perhaps. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no. These. Okay.
So which one is?
Let's move further down. There we are. I think we're there. Okay. Apologies. I'll carry on and hope this is right. So here on the left-hand side, we've analysed the building blocks of the research workflow, and these are in yellow in the diagram, from the conceptualisation of the research question that you want to ask, right through to gathering the data and the evidence which supports that analysis, and publication at the end of the process, how you disseminate the results. These are the main areas of the research activity. And on the right-hand side, we have the characteristics of open science, which I'm going to talk about, which will actually deliver that workflow. So we're going to talk about citizen science, open access to publications, open data, and data-intensive activities in research. So let's start with the first of these, which is open access to publications, which is the best-known area of open science activity. So in my country, in the United Kingdom, we have a preference for gold open access activity, and this is a record of all the gold open access payments that my library has paid for making material available as gold open access outputs since we started recording these payments in April 2013. And the payments come from 3 sources, and they're listed here on the third line of the presentation. So from our research councils UK, we pay just over 3,500 APCs for open access to mainly articles. From charity funding and the Wellcome Trust, they've paid for another 2,000 articles. And then my own university, the UCL Gold line, has paid for just under 3,000 APCs. So in all, since April 2013, we paid just over 8,500 APCs. And all this money, the money that's coming in from the research funders, about £2 million a year from Research Councils UK, about £1 million a year from the Wellcome Trust, comes to the library, because the library has taken on the role of managing these funds on behalf of the university. So if you go back to the diagram that we looked at, where we were mapping the research activity across the piece, yes, we've reinserted the library right into the research process by being responsible for facilitating the dissemination of the research outputs in open access through managing these open access funds. The second activity that we've undertaken in my university is to create an open access press. This is UCL Press. It's 2 years old. It's the UK's first fully open access university press, and it's a department of the library. So I'm the chief executive of the press, and it doesn't operate as a separate system within the university. It's not a separate department or a grouping. It is a department of the library. We published 50 monographs, so 50 research monographs in the 2 years since we've been founded, and we currently publish 9 journals. If you were selling research monograph through the current business model with a commercial business model, the average number of sales for a commercial research monograph is something like 60 to 100. It's actually quite low, partly because of the expense, and partly because researchers want to see other ways in which they can access that material. Here in UCL Press, we count downloads rather than sales of print copies, although we do produce print copies. And for downloads, these 50 monographs have been downloaded just over 500,000 times in the 2 years that we have been operating in about 200 countries. Well, in fact, just over 200 countries around the world. So open access publishing, again, this is a department of the library, has completely transformed the way that this material can be open and be made available for sharing and reuse. This is one of our books. It's actually a textbook. So we publish textbooks as well as research monographs. And this is a textbook from our master's course in burns and plastic surgery from one of our associated hospitals. And the author, Deepak Kalaskar, he's the first named author on the slide. He's the man in the middle behind the mask doing the operation. This book has been downloaded around 30,000 times in teaching hospitals around the world that want to get access to the knowledge and the insights that the burns team in the Royal Free are making freely available. And I asked Deepak why he wanted to publish with UCL Press. I said you could publish anywhere, you could have a choice of authors. This is absolutely groundbreaking research activity. Why do you want to publish with UCL Press? And he said he wasn't interested in making money. That wasn't important to him. The important thing was that the knowledge of the techniques that they are describing and that they're using in this master's course are known in other hospitals around the world. And he thought that open access, which removes the barrier to accessing the knowledge that he's created and represented in the book, he thought that open access was the best way of taking that forward. This is the UCL publishing model, and it represents a collaboration between publishers and the library, because I employ 6 colleagues in the press to actually run the press, and they're all publishers. They're not librarians, they all have publishing backgrounds, and they came to work in UCL Press because they wanted to know and experience what it feels like to work in an open access environment. So it's the library that's providing help with developing the open access business model, and it's professional publishers who teach the library what it means to publish and to be a professional publisher, reaching the very high standards that commercial publishers can attain. So this is a happy marriage between commercial publishing and the open science movement, the open access movement within open science. Let me move on to the second of the areas of open science that I want to talk about, and this certainly in Western Europe is a major development in terms of taking the open science agenda forward, and this is research data management. If publications represent the final form of output in terms of your conclusions from research, then research data are the building blocks. The raw data that you collect are the building blocks on which those conclusions are based, and that's how you verify. That's how you verify the findings. And through this EU-funded project, the LEARN project, which has just finished, it ran for 2 years, starting in summer 2015. These 5 partners, 2 of whom are represented in the room today, looked at issues around research data and how institutions can prepare themselves for managing research data that their researchers are producing. And these are the deliverables, the main deliverables that the project has produced. A model research data management policy. So if your institution wants to codify, as it should, how they manage research data, where it can be stored, what the conditions for storage should be, how much it should cost, who's going to pay, what kind of levels of access you are going to give to that data that you're storing. These all need to be codified in an institutional research data policy. And through the work of the University of Vienna, we have produced a model research data management policy that you can then use and adapt in your own institution to reflect the way that you want to manage those research data outputs. We developed a toolkit for implementation with a number of case studies which show best practice in how research data is managed in a number of institutions in Europe and in Latin America. We produced a self-assessment survey whereby you can assess the level of readiness that you or your institution has to manage research data. We've given some KPIs, some key performance indicators, which help you set the targets that you should reach in order to deliver good research data management activity. And you can measure yourself against the targets that we set in the KPIs to make sure that you are on target to reach the goal that you've set and that's codified in the research data management policy. And finally, there's an executive briefing in 6 languages for senior managers in the university, because you're going to go with them at some time in the course of this activity with a bill to pay for some of the developments. It might be new staff, it might be new platforms, whatever new developments you want to include in your research data activity, then there will be a bill attached. You've got to pay that. So bringing the senior management of your university on board is really important right at the start, and that's what the executive briefing is designed to do. These are colleagues in the Catalan universities in Europe, taking the best practice toolkit, the Learn Best Practice toolkit, and then going off to develop a collaborative research data management policy amongst all the Catalan universities in the region. Research data management is important because of a very significant development which the European Commission is funding along with the member states, and that's the European Open Science Cloud. And the Open Science Cloud is meant to be a research data commons for all researchers in Europe, where they can contribute their publications, their open access publications, and their research data, and under suitable licenses, make them available for sharing and for reuse. It's based on the vision in this high-level expert group report, realising the European Open Science Cloud, which came out in October 2016, and I was honoured to be a member of the working group that produced the report. And we looked at a number of issues and made a number of recommendations. And these are the high-level recommendations that we came up with, that we invite all stakeholders in the research community to take away and act upon. I won't go through all of them because the report is available for you as an open access output to read on the Commission's website, but maybe I could talk about a couple of them. So the 4th bullet down, EU contribution to fair data and open science. So what does that mean? What did we mean when we talk about fair data? So what we mean is that we defined what the characteristics of research data in an open environment should look like. And this is the meaning of fair data, because fair data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And if the research data that you're creating and storing on your research platform meets all those criteria, you then have open data, and you can say that you're contributing to open science. And your researchers are building the building blocks which deliver the open science cloud by providing the data which other people can share and reuse. Let's look at one more of these bullet points. Developing expertise. So at the bottom of the screen here, developing expertise. 500,000 core data scientists are required in Europe to deliver the benefits which the Open Science Cloud can provide. So what does that mean? Well, when we said in the report that we think we need 500,000 core data scientists, we had a number of things in mind. We thought that some existing roles could be transformed into data stewardship, and some of those roles probably reside in libraries, because the librarians, with their access to liaison networks in academic departments, are in a really good place to act as data stewards, to build up advocacy and training around the open science agenda, and to win supporters from the academic community into creating data which is fair and so available for sharing and reuse. So libraries are a big part of what these core data scientists will comprise. We also thought of data scientists as a new profession. So in some very data-intensive subject areas, it would be the research group or the subject group which employed a data scientist to help manage their data, to store it, to describe it, to make sure the format of the data was such that it could be made available for sharing and reuse. And that represents a completely new profession within the research environment, because we don't really have a career structure around data stewardship at the moment. So these 500,000 data scientists would partly be refashioned existing jobs that might exist in IT services or in libraries, or they might be new jobs, new roles that are created attached to research groups. What the Commission is doing to embed the European Open Science Cloud in the European research landscape is to issue a declaration, and this is underway now. They're gathering signatures for the declaration, and then it will go out for further signatures once the core group of signatories have signed. And this is supporting, the purpose of the declaration is to support all the ambitions of the European Open Science Cloud that I have talked about, and there are three main areas of activity that the statement, the declaration, covers. Fair data, which we've talked about. Services and architecture. Do we need to build new platforms, or do we need to make existing platforms more interoperable so that they speak to each other? And there are a web of platforms around Europe which together comprise building blocks of the European Open Science Cloud. Well, the report says that we don't, in the first phase, really need lots of new infrastructure, technical infrastructure. The infrastructure is already there, but it doesn't talk very well to each other and is based in silos which don't communicate. So the vision of the cloud is to put funding into these current activities to join them all up, so that you have an interlinked web of platforms and resources which together comprise the cloud. The fourth area, the final area that we want to talk about, is citizen science. And I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Tiberius Ignat, who will talk about citizen science and then bring the talk to conclusion.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending. So citizen science, as we see it, is a building block which is part of the third shift that it was presented by Dr. Paul Ayris before, the relationship between science and society. And this is something that we think is very important for advancing the open science. What is citizen science? We'll use a definition which is given in the European Council White Paper on Citizen Science for Europe. Citizen science refers to general public engagement in scientific research activities when citizens actively contribute to science, either with their intellectual effort and or with surrounding knowledge, or with their tools and resources. Citizen science doesn't mean only having volunteers and lay citizens participating by collecting data, observing phenomena to science. It's also engagement with these citizens and involving them in disseminating the material, in making lay summaries, if you want, for explaining in a plain English for them, in a plain language, what is happening in science and what is happening with their support. We like in particular not necessarily a definition, but a statement which was given by Professor Janez Štebe, the former chief scientist of Australia. And he says, science isn't just something scientists do. It is something in which every single one of us has a stake. And this speaks a bit about not building necessarily an ivory tower around research, but having a better relationship between science and society. Let's have a look to the components at a glance for citizen science. I hope you can read on the back of the room. First, determine if your research is suitable for citizen science. Second, form a team in which ideally we see a librarian being part of it. Develop, test, and refine different protocols, data form, educational materials, checklists, for example, and marketing and communication package that would support the relationship between the project, the managers, the experts, and the volunteers. Recruit citizens and keep them in a retention program. You may want them to help you for other projects later on. Train citizens and keep record of their training certificates so that you know which groups and who is able to help you in another project later on and what kind of skills have them acquired. The event development component, which looks on site events, online events, and for some more complex projects, base camps, for example. One important component is to build fair data, and Dr. Paul Ayris explained a bit earlier the concept of fair data, which I'm sure for the large majority in this room is nothing new. Analyze and interpret this data and inform the citizens. They like, if you have the citizens helping you, they like very much to know what the project is doing with their data and how the project is using their data. Disseminate results, and we encourage having also a pop science approach in disseminating these results, which will make the citizens feeling more comfortable with the language and the purpose of the project. Measure outcomes, and not forget, it's also important, the after events activities, which will give you a good chance to engage with a broader spectrum of the society to engage with a broader spectrum of society for your project, like local authorities, for example. So these are the components in our view in a very short perspective glance. We would like to give some examples because I'm sure most of you have heard or maybe even took part in citizen science projects. And some of you maybe just have the perspective of helping in projects which are related with observation of stars or different species. It's not only that. There are some good examples in mathematics, in earlier periods, but also in more recent years. There are good examples in neuroscience. iWire, for example, is trying to map the human brain by starting with a map of a retina, and is designed in a form of a game. Governance, Open17, which is carried on by one, and is trying to monitor how the societies are progressing with the sustainable goals which are established by UN organizations. In digital humanities, we have an example which is closer to us here, especially with UCL, which was the presenter before me, Dr. Paul Ayris, is Transcribe Bentham. Let's have a look on this project, Transcribe Bentham. It's an award-winning participatory project based at University College of London, and it aims to engage with public in online transcription of original and unstudied manuscript papers written by Jeremy Bentham. He was a great philosopher and reformer, and he influenced, among others, John Stuart Mill. The project is hosted by the Faculty of Law, but please have a look and see that the UCL Library Services is part of this project and is taking an important part of it. And it is founded under a scheme which is under Horizon 2020. So citizen science projects are suitable, generally speaking, to EU projects. Citizen science also gives an opportunity for different engagements with different stakeholders. For example, for this project, Transcribe Bentham, it was organized last month a hackathon together with IBM. And it was designed in a way of collaboration and an open event with lay citizens and scientists. And this is a form of engagement which brings new opportunities and brings new horizons in research. Another tool, an interesting tool which is used in this project is a bantamometer, which shows precisely for, as I said, this is a project which looks to the digitized manuscripts of Jeremy Bentham and to transcribe them, because he had a hand his hand write wasn't very easy to be read by the others. And by having this bantamometer, you can see exactly which boxes have been digitized and where, if it's a British library or somewhere else, and how many of them have been uploaded to the transcription desk where citizens can go and start to do the transcription. We would like to finish this small presentation of this project. There are so many other things to be said about this big project by quoting Jeremy Bentham himself. Many hands make light work. Many hands together make merry work. And this is probably an idea to be taken away from working with citizens and involving citizens, lay citizens in your research projects. We tried to identify some roles for libraries, and these are some of such roles that we propose to you. To build skills, first of all, in engaging in citizen science projects. Second, to support or be part of a toolkit for developing citizen science projects in your institution. Build collections of protocols, data form, educational materials, I mentioned before checklists maybe, to be available for other projects as well. And share them, maybe also with other institutions. Contribute to make the data fair. Citizens can really help you in enriching the digital objects, not only in terms of metadata, but other forms of enrichment. Offer the infrastructures, including your maybe spaces, your network of computers, other laboratories you may have. Contribute to the evaluation process. Communicate all findings and support both scholarly and pop science communications. Participate in the recruitment and retention process and assist volunteering in participating in the process, especially by distributing the educational materials and making sure that they have a good course in knowing how to contribute to the project. Participate in all marketing activities. You have one of best position to participate in these marketing activities and attract volunteers to the project. And very important, promote a positive attitude towards citizen science. These are some roles that we identified as being roles for libraries. They may very well be roles for other research units, but we strongly recommend libraries to get involved in citizen science projects. Citizen science is part of European strategies. LIBER 2018-2022 is considering having a working group in citizen science, and it wants to increase the roles of libraries in supporting citizen science. The European Council recommends to promote the creation and appropriate tools for standards in interoperability, metadata, citations, the anonymization of data, which is very important for projects which are close to clinicians, for example, where you don't want the data from your patients to be visible. And to promote the design and definition of sustainability models for citizen science. The European League of Research Universities recognizes citizen science as an evolving set of research methods and recommends creating, this is very important, a single point of contact for citizen science within the institution. Why not this point of contact to be libraries? We made a survey. We cannot say it was quite successful. We invited 130 individuals who we identified as proeminent authors in citizen science, being part in citizen science projects, representing leading institutions. We have received 11 answers so far, all of them extremely valuable. We decided to keep this survey open, so you are kindly invite you to participate, to follow this link and to participate and send us your opinions. We put together all these presentations from today will be available to you via the website which has been established by our co-organizers, CTK and the University of Primorska Maribor National University Library. And you may want to have a look of these pieces of literature, which we widely use in creating some of our proposals in these slides. As a conclusion for this presentation, we propose you a 4-step test for libraries to engage in open science. First, to offer leadership across the university and in open science approaches. UCL has a statement in saying that we don't follow, we want to lead, and that should be probably something that you would like, to have a leadership position in open science approaches. Identify the right infrastructure needed to deliver changes in terms of technical infrastructure, staff, resources of all kinds. Engage in skills development for your staff, how these skills are going to be built. Ensure that your advocacy leads to innovation, not only across your unit or across your library, but across the whole institution. This is, as we said, it is our meeting today is a part of a series of events which we organize in Vienna, Budapest, and Ljubljana. And for, I know there are some other international participants today here. We are, of course, considering other communities in continental Europe for organizing similar events, if you think it's suitable for you. So we are happy to get in touch with you. As well, we are happy to take any questions from your side. Thank you very much.
Thank you for presentation. If you agree, we will have questions at the end of, okay? And also at the end of the meeting will be some time to make some questions for our presenters. So we'll go to second contribution. V drugem prispevku bo gospod Massimiliano Carloni, ki prihaja iz Fairway Analytics firme, v bistvu nam bo predstavil, on je tudi dober poznavalec okolja, akademskega okolja publiciranja, predstavil nam bo v bistvu na kakšen način lahko znanost, v tem primeru družbena znanost, social sciences, naredimo vidnejšo, odmevnejšo, pa ne samo znanost kot tako, se pravi te znanstvene procese na področju družbenih ved, ampak potem tudi pri prezentaciji samih znanstvenikov, samih rezultatov. Se pravi, neka splošna tema je kakšen način zagotoviti večjo vidnost in odmevnost rezultatov na področju družbenih ved, social sciences. So I just thought a few words about your contribution, so please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And good morning. Good morning to everyone. My name is Massimiliano Carloni. And as you can easily imagine, I might be introducing a third language here, but I would be limited myself to say to you, grazie a tutti per essere qui. I think it's quite understandable. What is not understandable is why Tiberius put me always after Colleen 2 days ago, now Paul, nowadays and Tiberius himself. So it's a tough task, you know, to talk about Clarivate. This is a sort of commercial break after these pitches, and I will be talking about social science representation in our databases, okay? So I will try to give you some numbers, because we think that numbers speak, so numbers that you can use for your analysis, your conclusions, whatever they are. I will try to be much neutral than I can. Let's see if it works. Yeah. I will start to, well, For instance, to say something about Clarivate, I really hope that all of you are aware that since 1 year, our name is not anymore Thomson Reuters. The division of Thomson Reuters has been sold to 2 investment funds, and now the name of the company is Clarivate. Both companies are still operating, so there is still Thomson Reuters and now Clarivate that is basically dealing with all the stuff that you know, so Web of Science, JCR, Insights, and Notes, and so on. And this is, we also changed it, and as a matter of fact, we reshuffled several times the branding and the name of our solutions. But Web of Science is now the name of a platform, okay? Called 5 years ago Web of Knowledge, now it's called Web of Science. So it's not a single database. And like you will hear by Colleen, we have a cacophony of databases. I really like that term. So we have 16 databases included in Web of Science. And one of these is what was called Web of Science 5 years ago. It's now called the Web of Science Core Collection. This is our flagship database. And I will start to talk about social sciences. Social science on Web of Science Core Collection was born in the 1973, so 9 years before the launch of the Science Citation Index, the other side of the moon if you want. And here let me remember Eugene Garfield, given the fact that Eugene Garfield, the founder of everything, the founder of Institute of Scientific Information, died exactly this February, so at 91. And how many journals are indexed in the Social Science Citation Index? Well, you will be astonished to know that the number of journals is more than 4,500 journals, respect to an overall number of 12,800. So more than 1/3 of journals are social sciences. Then there are even 2,000 that are arts and humanities. So it seems that our database is very much comprehensive of social science stuff, but, and I know that you are thinking the same, when you are looking at the number of records of Web of Science, this is the overall number of records in the last 37 years, and these are the top 25 categories in Web of Science Core Collection. The first social science category that appears is history in the 18th positions. So, I mean, we have almost half of the journals that are social science, but the first social science category, here, by the way, this is the representation according to Web of Science categories, 252 categories. Even if you look at the broader, range, these are another type of categorization. We do have 3 types of categories in Web of Science categories. The ESI, Essential Science Indicator, that you might have heard because it's the basis of the international rankings, 22 broad categories. And then the JIP, one, with 6 categories that you see over there. If you count social science and maybe arts humanities, it's less than 10%. So half of the journals with less of 10% of the content in terms of records. And this is also important. Try to think, anytime that you think to the journals, that it's not simply the number of the journals that count sometime, right? What happened historically, maybe there is some lack, maybe we were missing some indexing of some content and so on. But if you look, it's not so nice to be looked at, but if you look, more or less, it's quite standard, a trend, a growing trend, obviously, for all the journals and for all the areas, more or less. It's orange, the social science stuff. What happens can be analyzed in these 2 side graphs, let's say. To the right, there are 2 graphs coming from another Howard solution insights, showing the number of records for the top journals in both the 2 areas, so life sciences and social sciences. I think it's the articles for the 2016 year. So if you look at the number, probably you cannot see quite well. Well, you have the mega journals, obviously, the usual one, PLOS ONE, and then scientific reports. You know that, by the way, they're open access, so we are on scope. But you see the number that are much bigger than the number to the right. So the best journals for what concerns the social science has something like 1,000 and something documents, much less than the journals over there. So what is the first impression is the first characteristics that the journals in the social science areas are even too many, but they have very few records respect to the other journals over there. So the coverage seems to be inferior, if you want. And then to the left, you see another characteristics that probably is well known. The characteristic is that in the social science area, article and review and typical document in a journal are not exactly the standard document type, or at least not the standard document types in all the areas. And you see, in fact, if you look only to the book chapters, in the possible ranking for the book chapters, social science and arts humanities are in the top 2 positions, because, as we have heard, historians or other scholars, they tend to publish books. So for taking this in consideration, to try to best represent social science, we have introduced other indexes in our collections. And let's start with the HESCI. HESCI, yes, if it seems that. So HESCI is a new index. Some of you have already heard about it, or some of you is completely unaware about HESCI, just to have an idea. Well, we have launched HESCI end of 2015, yes, at the beginning of 2016, and it's basically an index where we have basically relaxed some of the characteristics, some of the criteria that are important for a journal to be indexed in what now are typically called the WOS 3, so the main 3 indexes of WOS core collection. And I would like to point out your attention on this one that is quite important, the timeliness of publication over there. That is a criteria that is not anymore mandatory for what concerns the HESCI, so this new index on Web of Science core collection. And this is an important criteria for social science journals, because typically social science journals, especially of small publisher or not so big university presses, are typically not able to maintain the same frequency of publication, so if they are bi-monthly or 3-monthly or whatever they are. And so they are excluded from the main indexes of Web of Science core collection, because this is a main characteristics, try to think also to the fact that we have to produce the JCR and something like that. So in HESCI we have excluded this criteria, and as a logical consequence of this, this is the new process, by the way, of selection our journals. If someone is interested, we can go deeper in that. But anyway, HESCI is now an intermediate layer, in the indexing of our journal, in the selection. If we now go to the number of titles for HESCI, well, the situation is completely different with respect to the main index, to the 3 main indexes. So 2,500, more than 2,500 journals are now included in HESCI, and even more than 1,000 arts humanities, social science and arts humanities. So we could say definitely that HESCI has a large predominance on social science right now. These are the global number, the number that we will be reaching at the end of the year, 7,000 journals in HESCI, and 5,000 of them will have backfile. And this is the situation in terms of categories, in terms of records. So not in terms of number of journals, but now in terms of record for what concerns HESCI. And you see immediately the HESCI is much more representative of the social science. You have religion, economics, history, management. A lot of categories are belonging to this area. And there are also top papers, obviously. And let's have a look at the situation of Slovenia. And this time I not choose the surrounding countries, so I cannot be wrong, but I choose the former Yugoslavian countries, and maybe I've been wrong as well, but anyway, these are the countries, and this is the selection for Slovenia. So we have selected 11 new journals in HESCI for Slovenian journals. And you see over there the general numbers. So at the moment there are 24 journals in WOS 3 plus this 11 journals in HESCI. And these are the journals. By the way, you see University of Ljubljana, Faculty Press, University Press, University of... So it's another characteristic that I never mentioned the last 2 days ago, but there are a lot of university press in HESCI. Some statistics for you. I mean, how are different, the representation of Slovenian institutions considering HESCI, and even how are different the representation of some social science person considering HESCI. This is a real author in economics. But because today is also the open access day, and I was supposed to talk about social science. Let me also tell you that emerging source citation index is also important in terms of open access, because it's increasing the number of open access journals and articles in our database. So at the moment, for instance, by the way, if you have interest, we can go deeper in this analysis even later on today or when you want, just contact me. We have 19.5% of Slovenian records that are gold open access. Sorry, I haven't put here any legend, but the first two blocks means that they are gold open access. So, and the rest, the remaining part, the 22%, is what we can now see looking at the service by impact story. You probably are aware. The service is called OADOI. And we have announced a few months ago a partnership with Impact Story. So we will basically integrate in this service that is already available with some extensions. If you know Unpaywall, for instance, or something like that, we will be integrating on Web of Science platform. So we will be able to give you the exact number, at least a very statistically significant number with respect not only to the gold open access, so referring to the directory of open access journals, but even considering the green open access, so articles that you might be uploading on green repository, published it or already accepted for publication. So that would be, at the moment, the representation of open access in Slovenia. So more than 40% of the papers are open access, whatever is the model. Then book citation index, as I said, it's important the type of document. So we have introduced this indeed a few years ago, the book citation index, so the specific index for books and book chapters. And again, here are some data and number respects. Let me only point out the fact that we index the at chapter level the books. So you have the books, and you have also the different chapters of the books. It means obviously that the books could be, the chapters could be authored by different authors, obviously, and we refer to the different authors, so any chapters could be cited, obviously, and so on. And you have also here all the characteristics to be indexed. And my arrow is gone, now I found. And this is indeed the number of books for the different categories. So in the book citation index, there is no competition at all. Social science is definitely the most important area, with books, thousands of books in all the different categories. And even for what concerns the number of records, you see history and political science are definitely the top categories. And even in this case, just look at Slovenia. In Slovenia there are 36, always together with other Yugoslavian countries, there are 36 books indexed. With these representations, I would say that the macro category most represented is economy in the different, declination, business, economics, management, and so on. There are many books of some author. I honestly was completely unaware of this author. I know that it's also a bit controversial, so I was thinking, must I put here or not? But I put just for you to know that obviously we collect a lot of information with the book citation index. Book could be also highly cited. And here, let me just tell you or make you an announcement that has been recently released at the Highly Cited Researcher 2017, so exactly 10 days ago or 1 week ago, more or less. And you can find out the top Slovenian authors, or at least the Slovenian authors that have published more highly cited papers. You see some name right here. Last but not the least, a new type of research product, even in this case very close to the social science areas. The data citation index is another index that we have launched 2 or 3 years ago, 3 years ago maybe, that is indexing data set, repositories, so data repository, that by the way 90% and more of them are open, and then under this repository the data sets, so the sets of data that the researcher have posted, have uploaded on that repository. Here are some data. 340 repositories are currently indexed with a lot of the records. Let me just point out to you to give the idea of the records. 7 million of records is more than 1/10 of the overall Web of Science core collection. So it's not a very niche database. It's a quite huge database. And yesterday I spent some time to find out some repository that might be known by the audience. So this one is Max Planck, GeoRock. This one is by UCL, the Whitehall. I honestly don't know. Giga and DB is for the Giga Science, Oxford University Press journals, and then other named right will be cited as well. But anyway, there are really a lot of repositories. This is the, the representation in terms of country, and there is not a Slovenian repository. And this is the representation with respect to the areas. And even in this case, here the situation is quite spare between social science and science in general. But you see that there, because obviously genes, it's, well, the typical area in which, they need to host the data of gene series and so on. But you see also that social science and sociology and arts humanities are well representative between the top 10 sectors, and also other sectors very specific in social science. And here you see some name of this repository. Obviously, I can't provide you the list of all the repositories that we are indexing, but what does it mean, basically speaking? I cannot go live, but just to let you know what it means, I just searched it yesterday, so it's quite fresh, in all databases, so in the full Web of Science platform for drug consumption. Don't ask me why I choose drug consumption, but it's like that. And you see that you have different type of document, right? You have article, abstract, clinical trial, patents as well, whatever you want. And even data sets or data study here also, okay? You have sets of data that are related to this. You can also filter. I filtered for Slovenia, and then I found out this record. This record is a record of the data citation index that, as you see, is pointing, is referring to this database, repository, JESIS, that I don't know, by the way. And in JESIS, you can find out the data respect to this survey for direct consumption in Slovenia in the 2013. This is the way how it works, how it looks like, the data citation index. And by the way, let me announce, so the last slides, that we have introduced the data paper document type in Web of Science. So now, I'm fine. Now the data paper will be the paper that is pointing, that is referring to the data sets, okay? And shortly this is available now, so you can just select the data paper, so knowing exactly which are the papers that are pointing to some data. And shortly, this is the data paper, we will have also the link on Web of Science core collection. So stay tuned in this case, because on the records of Web of Science you will have the link at the bottom that will link you and will bring you to the data sets wherever they are hosted. Thank you so much for your attention. For any questions that you may have, obviously I'm at your availability next for the questions. Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay. Dr. Sonja Bezjak iz Fakultete za družbene vede. Sonja Bezjak od leta, mislim, 2012 je zaposlena na Arhivu družboslovnih podatkov. Tudi soavtor, ki se skriva v temle Janez Štebe. Dr. Janez Štebe je pa vodja arhiva. Zdaj, mogoče Janez me spomniš, koliko časa je že arhiv deluje, ker že v mojih časih je deloval seveda v papirnati obliki, samo letnico, približno začetek delovanja arhiva.
Lepo se imamo 20 let.
Se pravi 20 let sistematičnega zbiranja, proučevanja številnih projektov na področju družbenih ved in seveda zbiranje, arhiviranje, evalvacija raziskovalnih, se pravi zbirnih podatkov raziskav v tem arhivu. Sonja will present some activities in social science data archive, some activities on evaluation of those data, and some tools they are using in archive.
Thank you, Melita, and hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you and to discuss about who we are and what we do in the Slovenian Social Science Data Archive. I'll just briefly touch the question of open data, but I would like to spend some more time on the idea or concept of the data publication as a self-standing research result, and especially on the criteria for data evaluation in social science data archives. At the end, I'm looking forward for some open questions and dilemmas, of course. So Social Science Data Archives is situated at the Faculty of Social Sciences at the University of Ljubljana. It was established in 1997. It has a status of a national data repository for social sciences. So we cover depositors from all 4 universities in Slovenia, also from the private and public research centers, Statistical Office of Slovenia, so you can see it's like a broad spectrum of depositors. In our data catalog, there is more than 600 social science service, and on the annual level, there are like 700 users using our data sets. Worth mentioning is that ADP is a service provider for CISDA. CISDA is Consortium of European Social Science Data Archives. I will briefly touch this a bit later. And what is also very important is that we are taking part at various international projects. So Melita has already mentioned the year when we were established. It's like 20 years of being active in the field, and on the 8th of December we are organizing a celebration. So if you're in Ljubljana at that time, you're kindly welcome to join us. In the morning part, we will hold a roundtable on the challenges of qualitative research in social sciences, and later on there will be a celebration. Please visit us, but you have to register. Just to mention again, this Consortium of European Social Science Data Archive is very important for us, so we can improve and develop our services and knowledge in cooperation with many other archives that are working in broader in the European Union or even abroad. What I would like to stress as well is that ADP is actually active in different working groups inside of this CISDA consortium, and one of this is CISDA training group. I would like to inform you that this year we have been preparing a new online module on research data management. It's meant for researchers, and it will be launched in a few weeks here in Ljubljana in December. It was prepared together. It was joint work of the service providers, and ADP was leading one chapter on the archive and publish. So I will use some of this information from this chapter also today in this presentation. But anyway, I would like also to inform you that in 2018 there will be several workshops about using or how to use this online research module, and you're invited to take a look in a few weeks and to start using it. About open data, we know that this is idea, but it's not idea only, it's becoming reality. It's already stated in very important common European documents like Horizon 2020. It's becoming more and more mandatory, and of course it's about data being findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So this is what we are also discussing about with our depositors and potential depositors. Of course, there are a lot of benefits for research community deriving from this open data idea, like new research findings, further analysis based on data related to publication, removal of duplication of effort, so if once was paid, should not be paid twice, the producing of data, and of course more and more, not only for research community, but also for individual researchers and citizens. There are a lot of benefits deriving from open data idea. But how to bring this idea into the real life? This is quite a challenge also for us in the archive. What we notice that is very important to talk about with researchers and also other stakeholders is an idea of a data publication as a self-standing result. So what is this? And what is not a data publication, and what is archiving data. And I will try to develop those two ideas in next few minutes. So data publication is not the same as data publication, so there are differences. So a researcher can publish his or her data files wherever on a website, on a project's website, institutional website, or wherever else, but there are no guarantees that the data will be there after some time or that the files will not get corrupted. So this would be, according to the Knowledge Exchange report, a publication with small p. So this is not like a real publication. A publication with a capital P should follow a similar publication process as an article. So what does this mean? It should it should cover the following elements. Metadata should be properly documented about the data set. It should be reviewed for quality, searchable, discoverable in catalogs or databases, and of course citable in articles. Another question, so where to publish research data if not just somewhere? There are different or various ways, channels. So one of them is provided by journals. This is like a journal supplementary service. It's part of an article or an extra element of an article. Then there are, of course, institutional and general data repositories, domain-specific data repositories, and trusted domain-specific data repositories. So you see we have a variety of this kind of services. And another question is, of course, how to publish research data. There are two, how to say, general manners. So one is self-archiving. This way is a quick and easy way to publish data. So usually you don't need any help. It's easy, and these kind of services are offered by different service providers. And on the other side, you have archiving with trusted domain repositories. There you can usually get the help of an expert, which can help or guarantee to enhance the data quality. But kind of disadvantage of this kind of archiving is, of course, that it is time-consuming and it takes some extra effort. And that's what we do in our archive as well. So in several sets, the archives, an expert will review the quality of your data by judging the content of the study, methodology, relevance, legal consistency, and documentation of materials. In the module that will be launched in December, you can check the European diversity in such quality checks by CESDA archives. So it's not somehow standardized, but almost everyone has its own approach. Yeah, as already said, a lot of effort is being put in the evaluation in the social science data archives to be able to fulfill our mission, so the mission that is our own, and to be sustainable and cost effective. And what we evaluate researchers' work. So now let's dive into the selection and appraisal criteria and workflow into social science data archives. We have chosen the UK data service because they're really well developed and far ahead of us, and we learn a lot from their experience and documentation. And of course, we are happy also to show how we do it in our archive. So in the UK data service, I checked their collection development policy, their collection development selection and appraisal criteria, and their collection development appraisal grid. So these are like 3 documents stating how this evaluation process, or what are the elements of the evaluation process. So first is, of course, the strategic value of the research should be evaluated. It's about the scope of a collection of UK. If it fits to the scope of collection of UK data service, if it meets 3 central purposes. So it's potential secondary use and analysis for research, teaching and learning use, and the replication and validation of research. So these three central purposes are somehow important when evaluating the strategic value of a data set. Then not everything has a value for long term, something is only for short term, then something only for delivery and discovery. So then different steps are taken for the curation. So also this period of curation should be somehow evaluated. About the selection and appraisal criteria, so they are used to review materials relating to the value of data. So what is questioned? So is the data set high quality, authoritative, reliable, and up to date, with good temporal and spatial coverage, long and consistent time series, it has strong opportunities for comparable research. Is there a scientific or historical value of the data set? Is a new source or types of data? What's the international value? Uniqueness or risk of loss of this data set is also important to evaluate. Then usability and the meaning of the replication of data and resources. So I copied this part from the appraisal grid, so it's very simple. There are like questions, and you have to answer yes or no. For the user need and analytical value are questions like data useful for supporting decision making and policy formation, yes, no, useful for international longitudinal or comparative research, yes or no, and so on. Not to be too long, I will skip reading these questions. Then is another section, usability and accessibility of the data. Again, some questions on this topic to be somehow resolved. And there are also defined criteria for not accepting data, even though the value is deemed to be high. For example, there's problem with legal and ethical questions. There's a lack of sufficient contextual materials to enable reuse of the data set, or there are old unreadable formats that are difficult to convert or make usable. So you can see it's really, there are a lot of questions to be answered before we are certain if a data set is somehow worth being maintained or curated in the archive. And let's move to how we do it in the Slovenian Social Science Data Archive. If you open the homepage or website of ADP, you see this very simple picture about how to deposit data. You record the data set at ADP, you prepare and you deposit. It looks very simple, but it's not so simple. It's quite time-consuming, and I would say it's a really professional work to be done before the data set is archived and being offered to users. So these are some citations from our collection development policy. So what is our scope? ADP is aiming for research data, we are not accepting everything, but only those that are of interest for social sciences research. that are covering problems connected with the Slovenian society, studies with theoretical, conceptual, methodological excellence, especially longitudinal and internationally comparable data that include data from Slovenia, and we accept exceptionally studies outside social sciences if they are either structurally resembling research data from social sciences or they lack other possibilities of preservation. So this is our scope, what we are looking for. And then there, of course, we follow some criteria for evaluation. We check the richness of the content, the transparency and quality of the methodologies, and completeness and validation of data and documentation. And very important is, of course, if the depositor is willing to deliver his data set, what's the, how's with the copyright issue and other legal questions. Just to briefly summarize how we do it in our archive. So we had the head of the acquisition, and she receives information about the new research. It can be from different sources. Then the digital archivist gets in touch with the author and gathers needed information on the research. She prepares the report, which is being delivered on a monthly meeting of a commission for acquisition. The data archivist reports about this certain data set or research about the continuity, comparability of research, quality sampling and appropriate population, about the database size, geographic coverage, content of the study, other methodological criteria, relevance and quality of study materials. So it has really a lot of information in this report. And then this data archivist proposes whether to proceed or not into the acquisition phase. Commission, of course, listens to the report and then takes a decision on accepting or declining the research. In the acquisition phase, data archivists, so if we proceed into the acquisition phase, the data archivist reports to the author about the decision and asks for further assistance if needed, if some extra clarification is needed or some extra document is still lacking. If needed, another meeting is planned with the author to resolve these open questions. What we do in this meantime from the acquisition or in the acquisition phase before the data set is published, we do the quality check. This means the detailed quality check to ensure the completeness and the understanding of deposited data and documentation. Data set dimension checks, metadata checks, and data validity checks. So this is like a standard procedure, and it should be followed like this. Before the data is being published, author gets final evaluation. We have this study classification. There are like 9 groups or categories of studies. So from 1 to 6, they're like not so much important, but still important studies. From 7 to 9, it's a bit different. So studies that are given grades 7, 8, or 9 are given the status of a scientific publication. So it's not only a data publication, but it's a scientific data publication according to the criteria of the Slovenian Research Agency. So the author can get 30 points for this kind of a data publication, so it gets a credit. And of course, every data set that is published in our data catalog is it's mandatory to cite the data if you use it. So this is another credit for an author to be somehow recognized because others are using his or her data set. So we have already heard about measuring or tracking research results in the previous presentation. Similar services are being developed as well in tracking data publications. I'm sure you have already heard about this. So I won't go into any details here, but what I would like to point also, I borrowed this slide from another presentation which was given at the CoData conference in St. Petersburg in October this year. Why I chose it? Because it somehow presents these voices that are coming out from the research community and somehow criticizing this quantification or quantified measuring of the research results. So one point is making an incentive, giving credits to a researcher, but do we really get the effect that we wanted, or we get some other effects which are not so pleasant, and some, not some, but many researchers are not so happy about them because they influence their research career. And it's not about only a few individual voices, it's this fair evaluation discussion is also becoming part of European Commission documents. I copied here just a few sentences. So in general, evaluating a researcher cannot be reduced to a number because their merits and achievements are a complex set of different variables, difficult to be summarized by a single figure. So the question for the end is where and how to look for the right, fair way towards high-quality research, because it's not only about opening the data, but it's also how to help or to assure that this will strengthen the scientific results and also help to develop science and to improve the quality. So thank you, and if there are any questions.
Hvala, Sonja. Mislim, da imamo Miro zdaj malo časa za nekaj vprašanj. 10 minut mi pravijo, da we have some 10 minutes for questions. So please, kar izvolite vprašanja, bo kdo pomagal, hvala tudi še prevesti. Jaz nisem ravno native speaker, lahko tudi v slovenščini postavite za naše goste.
I'd like to have a question to Sonja, if I may. Have you noticed any need, or have you had any consideration in employing any kind of form of artificial intelligence for enriching and using the data you already have?
Thank you for the question. I will give the microphone to the head of the Slovenian Social Science Data Archive. I think he's the better to answer this question.
Well, I may not answer also very well, because typically we have quantitative data in the data archive. But we are moving also, because social science is so diverse in the types of data and the usage of data, we are moving also on the way to include other materials like for qualitative studies. And I think these are more like materials that would be used by certain techniques of this artificial intelligence to actually to mine the text or even other type of materials. But I mean, as social science is developing, I think that these techniques that also use the big data and the different kinds of data are coming to the agenda of the work that all the tools that social scientists are using, or maybe this is something that is also in a collaboration with linguists or other more IT approach people. So we are, as a center community, we have this on the agenda. I mean, we are not maybe very far in this respect, but we are monitoring what is happening in different, maybe also different disciplines in humanities and other disciplines. and we certainly would try to improve our services to also cover this kind of responding to the needs of our users. So that's.
I assume you have more long-tail data than big data.
Exactly. It's kind of when we are moving to this qualitative data, it's a variety. It's not mainly the volume. It's a variety of different kind of data. It may be also small data sets, a few pictures sometimes, and so on. So yes, it's a challenge in all directions in this respect.
Moje vprašanje je za gospoda iz Web of Science. My question is for Mr. Carloni and for Goran. I would like to ask them about book citation index. What is the criteria for indexing, and how do you recruit publishers? Because it's quite different. When we have a journal, it's one procedure. But let's say the monographs, the books are quite different. System of evaluating so do we need to sign some contracts with publisher with your company, or how does it go? Because this is many times we got a few questions now in our library how to put our, let's say, content monographs to the book citation index. Please.
Thanks for the questions. Well, for book citation index, for all other indexes, can you hear? Sorry, there are no, agreements or something like that you need to see. There is nothing to pay. It's a pleasure, to receive something. Okay, sorry. It's a pleasure to receive these suggestions, feedback, and so on. There are some rules, there are some criteria that are quite different from journals, books, and conference proceedings as well. You can find out the link. There is a white paper, basically, but are more or less the same. What we more or less the same, meaning that the quality, the innovation, the reference. But in book citation index is very much important the reference of someone, because journals are in the world 80,000 something peer-reviewed journals. Books are million. So obviously we do a preferential track, if you want, to books that are suggested to us to be indexed or are very much cited by other sources in the Web of Science core collection. So what you find out typically is books that are very much cited in the other indexes and so on, because we see that they are cited, so we decide that they are good for being evaluated. Same if you can give us some suggestions in terms of which are the best books, but anyway, there is no differentiation, for instance, for what concerns the type of book, textbook, disseminations, or something like that. Book series, several of the books are book series, so are also indexed in the journal area, if you want, like a recurring production. Anyway, we are absolutely available to discuss.
And yeah, thank you, Max. And what I would like to add to everyone is that we actually don't communicate with our editors who are responsible for indexing the content. But what we have now is these relationship managers that communicate with them and with us. So if you have questions about more questions that our relationship managers or editors can answer, you can either for emerging sources citation index, because this is hot topic as well, or for books, or for conferences, or any kind of type of document, just send me an email and I can connect you with the relationship manager and you can take it from there. Sometimes your journal is under long evaluation, you don't have a response. Contact me and I will connect you with the relationship manager, and at least we can understand, is it still under evaluation, was it accepted, was it rejected, and things like that.
Thank you. Hvala. Ostanejo z nami providerji, tako da imate čas do večera se oglasiti pri njih in jih kaj vprašati. And maybe now I will ask Paul and next to Sonja. Paul stressed now that it is very important for libraries also to be included in this millennium of open science. You didn't have much time, but as I could realize on web page, your library system in University College in London are very well embedded in this area. So maybe which are the core functions, core challenges for your libraries in this part of science, open science?
Yes, well, Son? Yes? No, I think I've got it. No, right. Yes, thank you. That's a very good question. And I think the main areas of open science that my library is involved in, most of them I try to illustrate in the talk. So open access to publications, both through repository-based solutions, so putting a complete record of all the university's research output into the repository, plus gold APC payments, and also the press, which is our main contribution, and I think is really taking off as a new model for how you disseminate research outputs in an open science environment. I managed to create a research data team in the library from existing resources, so I have 2 people at the moment in the team, and their main task is to raise awareness amongst researchers in the academic departments about the requirements of research funders. UCL research, particularly in science and medicine, is funded by a great number of external research funders, our research councils, charities, industry. And each research contract comes with a set of conditions, and conditions about research data are part of that contract. Can it be open? Can it be shared? Has it got to be closed? Is it under embargo and then made available after a certain amount of time? And academics on the whole are not confident at interpreting the research contracts as they refer to research data. So that's what the library team does. They work with academic researchers in the departments explaining what the requirements of their research contract are in terms of research data. And then the final thing that we really do is training. So we are developing an open science training program for our doctoral school for PhD students, so that the next generation of researchers which UCL produces will be fully confident in working in an open environment and treat open as the norm rather than the exception. And Dr. Labastida and I, Dr. Labastida will be speaking later today, he and I talked at a Leru doctoral summer school 2 years ago in Leiden. And already that generation of young researchers who are PhD students in our research universities consider that open is the norm rather than the exception, and can't understand why there are barriers to sharing and reuse. So the library is embedded in all this activity, and it really is a new role for libraries in terms of really getting embedded in the research process and being respected by the university for doing so.
Thank you, Paul. So you will have enough time to ask Paul further questions. Sonja, maybe how in your faculty, your library is involved in archiving, cataloging, and so on, research data?
Melita, thank you for the question. First of all, I would like to say that in the past, we as an archive, we already have seen the librarians as very important partners in raising awareness about research data management, about open data, and so on. So we have already delivered several workshops, especially for librarians. We have also developed some materials for librarians. Yeah, we really see the importance of the relationship between ADP and librarians who sit all around at the faculties. They're spread all over Slovenia, and they're actually the ones who have more contacts with researchers that we do here sitting at the Faculty of Social Sciences. About the relationship with our library at the Faculty of Social Sciences, I think we have a good collaboration as colleagues, especially on open science, open data questions, also about this bibliographic, how is it in English? Catalogization, cataloging the data sets. Yeah, what else? So I would say that we are regularly in contact, and we are somehow exchanging the information and being supportive in both ways. At least I hope the librarians have the same feeling about this.
Thank you, Sonja. I think that it's time for short coffee. Short coffee. Pro-Vice-Provost and Alexander Street invite you to take the coffee. Moram pa še povedati, da pri Pro-Vice-u je neka nagradna igra, tako da se oglasite na štandu Pro-Vice-a, poglejte, mislim, da je neka nagrada kar zaželjena. Tako da Pro-Vice tam in kava in držimo se časa. We'll be on time. Now it's time for a short coffee and 3 smiles, and then we will start.
Okay. Then if you, yes, very good. Strongly used. Learning and feeling the